Hey, everybody, it's Chris Aiken from the Classic Metal Show and the Aftershocks podcast. And I know you want to see this next episode, but right before we do it, just want to remind you that if you have an Amazon device, whether it's a TV or a Fire Stick or Fire Cube or whatever it would be, a Firebox if you're old school, make sure you add the CMSPN to it. Just look up CMS Podcast Network on your Amazon device. Add the channel, and you will get every episode of all 4 shows for free right there on your TV. Make us part of your TV viewing every single day and night, all right? It's the CMS Podcast Network, cmspn.com, and it is now on Amazon. So get it, all right? All right, here's the episode you came to see. It is Aftershocks right here on Aftershocks TV, and joining me on the show today to talk about his brand new solo release, Rejoice in the Suffering, it is the vocalist of Queensryche and now the vocalist of Todd La Torre. It is Todd La Torre. Todd, how are you, sir?
Voila.
Dude, as a fan of what you do, man, it is great to speak to you once again, man. And it's great to speak to you about a record that's going to surprise a lot of people, man. Rejoice in the Suffering. For people that are coming in hoping to hear, Queensryche Light or something, they're certainly not going to get that.
Yeah, it's definitely not that. It's, it's kind of abrasive at times and gritty and, in your face. And it's a different animal than Queensryche for sure. But, it was an awesome opportunity to get to express and do things that I don't do in Queensryche. That's just another aspect of my sound and kind of what I like and other ways that I like to sing as well. So I can't believe it's right around the corner. People are finally going to get to hear the whole record. You've obviously heard the entire record,
sure.
So you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, it's good times.
Absolutely. Now talk a little bit about the decision to do a solo record at this point. I mean, obviously pre-pandemic, Queensryche was on a nice roll since you joined the band. And is this just open? Was this opportunity open because of the pandemic? Because Queensryche's off like everybody else, or how did this?
I mean, it's a couple things. I mean, number one, I've been talking about doing a solo record for years.
Sure.
And it's become like this long running joke with like some interviewers that I know and even the label, like, so, hey, when are we going to get that solo record? And it literally, like, I'll do an interview 3 years later and they're like, how's that solo record coming?
Right.
And so it's like, I know I'm trying, but, with Queensryche always touring, it's, you're home for like a week, 4 days.
Right.
And it's just not adequate time to really get your headspace just in that and give it the attention that it deserves. So yeah, when the shutdown started happening in mid-March and we flew home and we said, okay, like nobody really knew how long things were going to be this way. I said, well, I know it's going to be months,
right.
So let's just say it's 3 months. And I remember coming home and calling Craig and going, hey dude, like this is the time right now to really buckle down and let's get this record done and do it. So that's what we did. We wrote, most of the songs weren't even written.
Okay.
A couple pieces of 2 of them. And the title track was written already at that point. But the rest of them we wrote and we recorded in like about a 4-month period.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Now, for you, who plays drums, and I'm going to assume can play a couple more instruments, or at least tinker with a few more instruments. Was it the process of you having ideas that you just knew didn't fit, so you recorded them and kind of held on to them, or?
No, these were all just fresh ideas. There was the only riff. Pardon me. The only riff that I had that I ever showed Queensryche, it was just one tiny little riff, and it was on the part to Darkened Majesty,
Okay.
where it says "Mirror, mirror on the wall." You know, there's the guitar part that's that little piece was in another thing that I had written that I showed the band, and I was like, yeah, this isn't. I mean, I'll show it to you anyway, but it's probably not anything we'll want to use in Queensryche necessarily. And so that's the only little sliver of anything that I showed the band that we just didn't use, and that was only used for that one little kind of pre-chorus thing in that one song. But everything else is all fresh. You know, Craig, most of these riffs are Craig's creation. Okay. And, you know, together we collaborated on guitar riffs and vocal melodies and drum parts. And, you know, just the two of us just did the whole thing from scratch. So there was no like old lingering stuff that was a Queensryche thing or that I tried to pawn off as Queensryche that got rejected, except for that one tiny riff, which doesn't even really count.
Sure. And it's interesting you pointed to that tune, which is my favorite tune on the record. It's got that kind of, the chorus feels a little Queensryche-ish, but man, the rest of it sounds like an escapee from a fight record or something, man. Your vocals are just menacing on that one.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, a lot of people have been bringing up the fight thing, and It's funny that people say that because when we started first writing that, I remember telling Craig, like, dude, you know what I miss? And I love that first fight record. As I said, on this, I don't want a million layered guitars. I want more of a stripped down, although we added some keyboards and some synth kind of atmospheric pads and stuff that happened. But I wanted that more raw vibe. And Craig and I both referenced fight, you know, early on in the writing process. Like I love how fight sounded like this.
Sure.
And, you know, and so when people would pick up on, it reminds me of fight, I was like, wow, that's interesting. Cause that was something that, you know, we talked about, like how we missed, like, I want to put out songs that I don't hear from bands that much anymore.
Sure.
Or you know, what are the elements of like metal that I like that I just don't hear bands releasing, and let's do the stuff that we like as fans of heavy metal. And that's what we did. So all these songs were just songs that we like, different aspects of heavy metal, and we're going to write our own. So that's kind of what the record is.
No doubt. Now tell me a little bit about Craig Blackwell, who, color me uninformed, but I don't know anything about him. How do you know him? And have you played in bands with him before? or you know, maybe?
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, the first band I ever joined was called Blackwell as a drummer.
Okay.
And, you know, he was a great guitar player back in high school. And, you know, he was the, you know, that guy. And, you know, we played in bands together. We've been best friends since I was about 14 or 15 years old. And, you know, just all these years later, you know, fortunately I have a platform that it allows for a larger audience to hear my stuff.
Sure.
And so when it came time for this, I was like, dude, we're gonna do the record that we always wanted to do. And I want to do a solo record, and I don't want to do it with anybody else but you. And, you know, and so this is his really first introduction on this kind of a scale to people. He's worked with other people. I think he did some songwriting sessions with Kelly Rowland, who was in Destiny's Child.
Okay.
I think that he did some stuff with Circle to Circle, doing like some producing for them for an album. And I think a co-write on something. But, you know, outside of kind of this area, like, he's not a name that people will know.
Sure.
But now I'm hoping that people will really get to learn about Craig and hear his songwriting and his playing too. And, you know, he deserves to be heard and known. And, I'm really excited for him to kind of get this attention, and people people get to see what he's all about. He's an awesome guy. He's a super talented guitarist and musician. And, so that's about Craig.
Cool. Now, is there or are there thoughts of there being a band to maybe play shows? Should we ever be allowed to play shows again? I mean, is that in the
something
okay?
Yeah, that's something I'd love to do. I mean, once touring opens up, obviously I'll be out with Queensryche first.
Sure.
And that always takes, my priority. But if there's some downtime where the band doesn't have anything going on for a couple of weeks, and there's an opportunity to play a live show, I would love to do, have an opening slot for Testament or Overkill or, Metal Church, or I don't know, some of these kinds of bands that I love in front of that kind of an audience. It's definitely something I would like to do at some point is play these songs live. And, cause I'll never do that with Queensryche. I would never try to interject my own stuff into Queensryche. So, time will tell, but, it's something that I definitely have thought about and want to do. And, it's just a matter of timing and logistics and, the whole uncertainty we're all facing with the pandemic. So we'll see.
Definitely. This is more of a Queensryche question. Not that I'm going to ask a bunch of Queensryche questions, but it's just more of a kind of a business question, I guess. You see the same thing that everybody else sees that's going on out there with the venues are closing at an alarming rate, and Queensryche especially falls into that spot where you might be just big enough to avoid that, but at the same time, every band in the world is going to be out there at the same time. Do you worry that it's going to be hard just to book tours and find appropriate venues to play?
Absolutely. I mean, that's a concern that we certainly face. One of the benefits, sometimes we catch some shit for playing a casino show. Oh, they're playing casinos. But you know what? There are times where a lot of these other bands, they don't play casinos, or they can't play casinos, and when all these other venues are full with a million other bands, if there are opportunities where we play some great casinos, and those shows go over really well, and they're clean. The amenities are great. The pay is good. And so sometimes that's kind of like a safety net in a situation like this, where you say, okay, well, maybe the guarantees have changed. With the casinos, they usually operate a little differently. So something like that, may potentially be something very, very favorable for us, particularly with regard to what you just mentioned. Everything's going to bottleneck,
right?
Because you've got a million bands that are eager to play. You've got limited now, fewer venues, and and then you have people that are afraid to go to a show, even if it's a reduced capacity. And so there's a lot of uncertainty with that. I mean, fortunately, we're a band that can play a great big festival, to club shows, to theaters, to casinos. So we do have a little bit, I think, a little more opportunities to play than some other bands do. But nevertheless, it's something that we have to be very mindful of and strategic. And if it doesn't make dollars, it doesn't make sense.
Right.
And that's kind of what we're all going to have to look at, is the numbers, and see, by the time you fly 7 guys, with a crew or whatever out to a location, if it's reduced capacity, how much of the tickets, how much, is this feasible?
Sure.
And that's something that the bar owners or the promoters or the buyers, obviously, they're just looking at the numbers as well. So it's a very uncertain time, and I don't know what the hell's going to happen. So it's been 10, 11 months since we've played.
Sure.
And this year, they just keep kicking the can down the road with shows in the hopes that it'll be safe to perform then. So we'll have to still see what happens.
Sure. Did you guys at all consider doing live stream type shows? Because it really seems, especially I the last time I saw you was a year ago, or I guess a year and a half ago at this point, at the Roxino here in Cleveland. And the show you do, I mean, obviously you guys feed off of the crowd, but the show you do almost seems like it would work very well in that live stream environment.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about doing the streaming thing. Right now especially even, a few months ago, even leading up to now, it's like, I wasn't comfortable getting on an airplane at that point when all this was kind of happening. And, and so just trying to limit the risk of exposure. And, other members in the band are, a little apprehensive to be in a gathering, and then maybe there's a production crew. And so it's something that I know we've obviously talked about, but it's a matter of like getting together, rehearsing out a special type of a set,
right?
Instead of just playing like a normal set. You want to do something unique and special.
Sure.
That it maybe is something that people will never see again, to get them to tune in. And again, that requires, days and days of rehearsal. And I think just because of the pandemic, even though a lot of bands it appears to be quite lucrative from a safety perspective, we've still just been a little apprehensive for that reason.
Yeah. Bottom line, it's not worth dying for a paycheck.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough dilemma because on the one hand, you want to do everything you can to be as safe as you can.
Sure.
On the other hand, you are a human, and you don't want to just you can't live in a bubble forever.
Right.
And it's like, how do you balance those two things with have some semblance of sanity and still be, cautious? I don't know. So it's weird.
No, I get it. Totally get it. Well, for people that are waiting for the Queensryche experience, well, they're not going to get it now, but what they can get is a much heavier experience with Rejoice in the Suffering. It is the brand new release from Todd La Torre. And Todd, where should people go to buy the record and keep up with you and do all that good stuff?
Sure. So it's available through Rat Pack Records,
okay.
Rat Pack Records. If you go to their website, for the artists, I'm there available. You can pre-order the album, which has been doing great. We have vinyl, we have CDs, we even have cassettes.
Wow.
For those diehards that still like to collect and have an actual tape. There's some really unique bundles available. And then after release day, February 5th, you can still purchase it through there, but also through my website, which is just toddlatorre.com. I'll be launching some merchandise where you can get T-shirts and maybe some masks and some other exclusive bundles that'll be a little different from what the label does. So Rat Pack Records, they can buy it, pre-order it, and before you know it, it'll be out, and it won't be our little secret anymore.
No doubt. Well, one more time, the name of the album is Rejoice in the Suffering. It is Todd La Torre. It's out February 5th. And Todd, thanks so much for joining us on Aftershocks.
Hey, thanks for having me, and I really appreciate the interest and the support, and I hope you dig the record and tell all your friends about it, and let's make a big splash out there with some new stuff.
Thanks for listening to Aftershocks. For more episodes, go to our website at www.aftershockspodcast.com. Visit us on our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter pages for more news and information on the podcast. And be sure to subscribe, listen to, and review all episodes on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all other podcast platforms. For your music listening pleasure, visit our website or go to www.shockwavesradio.com. For all comments and questions, please email us at info@aftershockspodcast.com.
All right, everybody, another great interview right here on Aftershocks TV. And before we go, just want to remind you one more time, make sure you get over and subscribe to the CMS Podcast Network, cmspn.com. You can watch, you can listen, you can subscribe to everything that we do. Not only us, but the Classic Metal Shows, Shockwave Skull Sessions, Talk to Me. It's all there. One site. Get 4 great shows. Never have to do anything again but be entertained. So check it out. cmspn.com, cmspn.com, cmspn.com. Until next time, folks.